Welcome to the Exposer. Today we'll be exposing Spac Nation pastor Daniel Ogoloma. Daniel Ogoloma is born in March 1995. He is one of the most known pastors at Spac Nation, mainly because everyone sees him as Pastor Toby's favourite. He follows Pastor Toby everywhere. He lives with Pastor Toby. He carries Pastor Toby's bags, Bibles, everything. He plays the same role that Connor plays, but Daniel Ogoloma is Pastor Toby's favourite one. He doesn't have a job and spends most of his time just around the pastor. Daniel spent years in jail for robberies, possession of stuff he shouldn't have. When he left the jail, him along a few of his mates joined Spac Nation. So from a young age, Daniel was groomed to start Spac Nation. Once upon a time, Spac Nation got Daniel to go to college because Pastor Toby liked something about Daniel. So he encouraged him to do his studies because Daniel had no qualification. So whilst Daniel finished his BTEC qualifications, he began to believe he could get involved in politics. So he had dreams of becoming a politician. So Daniel would always preach and always tell everyone how he believes he will become Prime Minister. This is an ex-convict who only has a small level of BTEC diploma to go with him. And this is the same guy that believes he will become a Prime Minister. So Daniel was groomed from a young age, lived with Pastor Toby, did everything Pastor Toby told him to do. As you must understand, not everybody in Spac Nation is forced to do certain things because it's down to Pastor Toby. So there's some members at Spac Nation that Pastor Toby wants around him just to use them. They're basically like his slaves. They're not the guys who can afford to give much to the church, and Pastor Toby does not expect much from them because they live with him, he feeds them, but their role is to just follow him around everywhere he goes. So Daniel is Pastor Toby's number one follower, Pastor Toby's number one slave. So after a year and a bit at Spac Nation, Daniel now wanted to make some money. So he realised that his friends at Spac Nation were getting involved into businesses and loans to give to Spac Nation, and Pastor Toby was applauding them. He saw that there was a lot of potential in making money and in making Pastor Toby happy. So many of you guys know, most people at Spac Nation, most of the pastors are involved with opening up businesses online, which later dissolves because Spac Nation would open a business, take out a business loan and dissolve the company. So Daniel was no different to this. In terms of conning a lot of people at Spac Nation, Daniel didn't do too much of that. He's been involved with a few incidents, but nothing to the same level of other members at Spac Nation. Daniel was taught how to close deals because he followed Pastor Toby everywhere. And for many of the people at Spac Nation that know, whenever Pastor Toby goes to a meeting, is to lie and deceive someone into getting a huge sum of money. Pastor Toby doesn't get himself involved with opening businesses online with his name, but he does have meetings with big companies and people with money where he persuades them to invest into businesses. So Daniel learned a lot from Pastor Toby. So Daniel opened up the business online on the 17th of December 2015, and the company was dissolved on the 17th of July 2018. Nothing new there because this is what Spac Nation do. They use these young people when they join Spac Nation, groom them, and Daniel would have had the best grooming because he moved into Pastor Toby's mansion. He wore Pastor Toby's clothes. He followed Pastor Toby everywhere. So he felt very important. So opening a business online was nothing for him. He'd done the business, got a loan out of it, and 3 years later, the business dissolved. Daniel did manipulate a few people into investing into the business, but this is not something he carried on for too long because he followed Pastor Toby most of the time, like I mentioned. So he didn't really have the time to try to find people to con. What Daniel had time to find was to mess around with girls at Spac Nation. Because he was always around Pastor Toby, he knew he had some attention from the females. So Daniel tried to use his position to get up to no good with some of the females and some of the pastors at Spac Nation. So he spent his time hanging around Pastor Toby and in his spare times doing things with girls at Spac Nation. And when I say things, allegedly sleeping around with some of these girls at Spac Nation. Daniel himself, who was in a relationship with a pastor at Spac, ended up cheating on her with a minister who was 16-year-old at the time,
allegedly,
and who was drunk at the time that he slept with the 16-year-old. The 16-year-old reported it to the pastors, but the young minister was told to forgive him and forget about it and never to speak about it again.
Allegedly.
So these are the things that go on all the time at Spac Nation. And leaders of the church ask these young girls to forgive and forget. And these young girls believe in these pastors, so they don't make it a big deal. Daniel, he would use Pastor Toby's cars, wear Pastor Toby's clothes, wear Pastor Toby's watch, would dress and act a certain way just to try and get the attention of females at Spac Nation. But let me tell you guys, this is a guy who has no salary, no income. This is a guy who openly admitted on the video that he was only given £50 a month, that he did not care about money. Because he doesn't lack anything. He is always around Toby. Toby buys him food. Toby gives him his clothes. This is the reason why Daniel isn't so hungry to get money like his friends. His friends feel like they need the money because they're not always around the pastor. But Daniel is always around the pastor, so the pastor will treat him from time to time. So this is why Daniel and few other pastors in Spac Nation are very dangerous, because even though they may not be affecting the public in terms of the loan and the business system, these guys are still abusing girls at Spac Nation. Daniel was also part of a corruption regarding 2 young black men who came to Spac Nation for help. Spac Nation wanted to invest in their clothing line, but in the end Spac Nation ended up fooling these young boys out of a 10k loan and left these 2 young men in debt. Daniel was behind this because Daniel was the one to bring the young boys' clothing line to Pastor Toby's attention. Spac Nation bragged about it and tried to get members of the church to buy the clothes of these young men. But Daniel had a long-term plan. Him along with Alex, because Alex was the main person to get these young men to take out a loan. But Daniel was very important because he befriended these young men. He made it look like he would do anything for these young men. He's the one to introduce these young men to Pastor Toby. So these young men believed in it. These young men believed that the clothing line will become a success. Daniel even bought the clothing line off the young kids and encouraged some of the members to buy it. But later on, when the young men were fully involved in Spac Nation, this is when Alex stepped in to fool them out of a loan. Fooled them out of a loan and left them in debt. But Daniel had a big part to play in that.
Later on, Spac Nation will allegedly falsify documents and helping Daniel get into Cambridge. At the time, we said we knew there was something fishy about Daniel going to Cambridge, and Spac Nation used it as a promotion to act like they've gotten a lot of members into top universities. But we did say Daniel would not be there for a long time because it felt like something illegal had happened there, allegedly. And Daniel would not be at Cambridge for a long time and will return by Toby's side to continue to hold his handbags and walking around him.
This is why it's important to expose pastors who people may not really be familiar with. Because they're the one, like I said in previous videos, they're the ones who do the dirty work behind the scene. So people like Daniel must be exposed. So this is the exposing of Daniel Ogoloma.